Hey, everybody, my name is John DePietro.
And I'm Bob Zagami with the Camper Report Show.
And on this Camper Report Show, we want to ask our viewers, yes, we want to ask you what you want to have under the Christmas tree this year for your RV. Bob, what do you think we're going to hear from?
Well, I think there's all kinds of things that these RVers want. You know, the stores are filled. And the nice thing is when you go to your local dealer, you don't have to worry about the cargo ships or anything else. It's on the shelves. So look at grills, look at propane, look at tire monitors, look at awnings. And there's such a myriad of products that RV dealers have right now in stock for the holiday season. Don't have to go anyplace else. Just go to your RV dealer.
Exactly right. And here's what we want to do, folks. We want to ask you what you want for a gift. Put it down there in the comment section. And then we're going to compile a list of all the people that tell us what they want. And we will talk about those products in the next couple of weeks. Maybe it will give you an idea of what to buy for either yourself or someone special in your family. It's going to be a great feature to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. But Bob, in the meantime.
Well, it's a good point, because you'd like to think that most of these things that you buy might go under the tree. That's the tree in the house. But you could go out and buy an RV and put it under the tree outside your house.
So get the tree, put it under the RV. Was that the way you said it? Or get the RV and put it under the tree?
Buy the little stuff at the RV dealer and put it under the tree. Buy a big RV while you're there and put it under the big tree out in the driveway.
And once you get your RV, once you get your RV, so write down there in the comments section. We want this to be an interactive show. We want to know what you want for Christmas. And on this particular show, I'm going to be talking with Jason Tansom, who is the editor of Snowbirds and RV Travelers. And he's going to tell us all about what people from the North are going to be looking for this summer. Now, you don't have to be a Canadian to enjoy this segment. They have discovered some new parks in Florida and Arizona, and you can find out about it. How about you, Bob? Who are you going to be talking to?
I've got a great interview with Randy Henriksen, who's been around for quite a while with United Park Brokers. We're going to talk about the consumer side. About every camper always says they would like to buy a campground, but there's a lot attached to it. There's a lot of things going on right now. So it's going to be an interesting conversation.
So own your own campground, and then you don't have to worry about being shut out because all the Canadians are coming back.
And you'll always have reservations.
Yeah, you'll always have something to do.
Right.
So with that being said, this is the Camper Report Show, everybody. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
I'm Jesse from Outsiders Calling, and I love adventurous family travel with my wife Jenny and our son Tucker.
For over 3 years, we've RV'd across the U.S. and Mexico, and it's tough to find places that meet all our needs.
Now we plan our trips with the RV Trip Wizard, pull it up in the RV Life app, select it, and go.
It helps us discover amazing new places to grow together as a family.
RV Trip Wizard with the RV Life app is an awesome trip planning combination.
You can get both for one low annual price. Check out rvlife.com to learn more.
Okay, welcome back everybody to the Camper Report Show, and my guest today is Randy Henriksen, and you may not know him, but he's probably impacted some of your camping experience over the last 40 years, maybe a little bit more, Randy?
Yeah, maybe a little less than 40, but we'll take that.
Give a little bit about your background, because it relates to camping and the outdoor hospitality industry.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it. I first got started in the industry back in the mid-90s and started with one campground in Central Texas and got into it quite by accident via an investment client of mine who said he was buying an RV park, but didn't want to purchase it unless I would run it for him. And after I said, "You've got to be out of your mind," I realized pretty quickly this is an interesting business. So I really got smitten right off the bat. And ever since then, oh my gosh, I worked for a large company that owned multiple parks around the country. And eventually in 2003, splintered off from that and formed Horizon RV Resorts, which later became Horizon Outdoor Hospitality. And we were at the time one of the very few third-party management companies exclusively serving outdoor hospitality. And I believe it's still one of the largest, if not the largest, independent third-party management company. It did that for about 18 years, and we managed over 70 parks in 20 some states over that span of time, and sold the company about a year ago to Scott Foose, who ran the company for me for 10 years. Best in the business. Sorry, Scott, got to plug you. But he's taken Horizon to levels I never could have. And I'm just so pleased to see him taking off just like crazy, like gangbusters, like he has. A dynamic time in the industry, and he's certainly riding the tailwinds on that. And in the meantime, I jumped off of the management end and jumped into the brokerage. So I formed United Park Brokerage in 2018 with my partner, Peter Meyer. And it's really kind of leveraging about 30 years in the industry. We've done everything from managing parks to development to brokerage and everything in between, kind of 360 degrees, every phase of the industry. I've kind of touched it in somehow, some way over the years. And now focusing exclusively on brokerage, but brokerage with a twist. And I won't get too deep in the weeds on you, Bob, but one of the things we do a little bit differently is not just transactional type of things. We want the buyers of parks, especially if it's their first time in the industry, to really kind of leverage some of the relationships we've forged over the years and help them be successful. So it's not just selling a park. It's also bridging intros to people in the industry who provide certain types of things they might need. It could be appraisers, insurers, it could be tents, it could be anything, because we don't charge anything for that. We want them to be in good shape when they buy an asset and not just say, well, what do I do now? We want to try to fill in some of those blanks for them. So we take a little bit different approach, but it's in the better interest of the health of the industry in general, I think, if we can really provide a lot of services to somebody just coming into the business.
Well, you know, that's so important, because when you look at our industry today and how it's changed I've been in it 25 years and met you early on, but look at how it's changed, and look at the number of people that are coming into our industry who have never been in it. And that's true of campgrounds and outdoor hospitality, certainly true of the RV consumer. So we have all these new consumers, 50% of which are first-time buyers buying all these RVs. And they haven't owned an RV, but they've never been in a campground. And many of them are going to campgrounds where somebody has just purchased a campground, or a larger company has consolidated some of those campgrounds. So if you look at this from a consumer perspective, what do you have to say to them about this? Because you're seeing the same thing in the outdoor hospitality, where you've got large consolidators and you have small mom and pop dealerships. And because I'm a small businessman, always have been, I come down on the side of the small business person. So what do you say to the consumer that looks at that and says, gee, I want to go to a big one, or do I want to go to a small one? What factors come into play for the consumer?
It's a great question, Bob. The industry has changed, as we all know, just leaps and bounds. I mean, in the past 20 years, 10 years, let alone the last year, let alone the last 6 months, it's something that's always dynamic and shaping. There's a lot of institutional capital coming into the space, and many of them are looking to aggregate and consolidate several different properties. And that's the way of commerce. That's the way it's going to work. There's no stopping that. The interesting thing is, from my perspective, that the consumer actually benefits from that. And what I mean by that is, when you have people coming into the industry that are providing really upscale or enhanced guest experiences, it kind of puts the pressure on everybody in the industry, small parks, the smallest park up to the biggest park individually owned, to kind of up their game too. So in essence, what's happened over the past few years is, with the influx of what we'll call intelligent capital, there's been a real kind of return to what's making this business operate. Let's focus on the customer dynamic. Let's focus on what our customer is looking for, and let's give them that. Let's give them value for the money spent. You know, value is perceived when results exceed expectations, as the old saying goes. So when they're paying attention to the consumer data and saying, this is what our folks want to have when they come here, let's provide that. Arguably, it raises the tide for all vessels, as they say, right? Mm-hmm. So overall quality has increased exponentially, and it's continuing to each and every day.
Yep, and that's what the consumer wants. And you're right. Some on the low end may drop off, but the fact of the matter is, They're spending very good money for RVs, whether they spend $25,000 for a travel trailer or $250,000 for a fifth wheel. They want a certain level of experience. And that's what we've seen come into it. It's a much happier experience. Look at some of the large ones. Even the large ones themselves have evolved, where they had a bunch of campgrounds, but now they've changed those to RV resorts. They've got water parks. They've got amusements. They're becoming true destinations just for the campground or the RV resort itself, versus somebody going to a campground and then leaving the campground every day to do something else. Talk about that dynamic a little bit.
Yeah, it's another one of those very important dynamics, Bob, that's been ever more present in recent years. And frankly, as an old industry vet, I'm really happy to see it. And it's kind of gone from a transactional type of lodging where you stayed for a night and went on to the next place. As you mentioned, it was a place to park and you had to have it looking good and site level and what have you. And that was fine many years ago. But today it's kind of shifted from nobody really pays attention so much to what did I pay for the night as much as they do about what was the experience that I had. And the parks that are very successful these days, and these can be the smallest individually owned parks up to the big mega parks, is to make that not so much a place to stop over as to make it a base camp. And by base camp, one of the things that we've always stressed over the many years I've been in the industry is you want to sell the zip code if you own a park. That's what you really want to do. Some of the best amenities aren't on your property. They're in your local community. So leverage the relationships with museums, golf courses, steakhouses, what have you like that. Become a concierge. And lo and behold, what happens? You're helping the community, which of course, we're huge supporters of small businesses. I'm one myself and big supporters of that. But when you're supporting your local community and local vendors and providing a good experience for your guests, now all of a sudden, what are they doing? They're saying, well, this is the place I want to stay. I'm having a great experience here. The park is attendant to my needs. They've got everything that I could want. And there's other things to do around here. And when I show up and say, hey, so-and-so RV resort sent me, I'm greeted by, that's wonderful. Please tell them we said hi. So when you can kind of leverage the local networks and you know what I mean, you've really increased your amenity pool just by networking in the local community. And that benefits the consumer as well, because now, by gosh, when you show up at some of these parks, you're treated like royalty, and they're hosting you, and then the true word of a host, and guiding your tour.
You're right. And again, talking about the community, a lot of the smaller, medium-sized parks have made extensive renovations, but sometimes people tend to go to the name brand or the larger brand without checking out the other ones. And sometimes the park owners will get upset or be concerned if a KOA or a Jellystone or some large consolidator comes in across the street. And I've always said to my RV dealers that, everybody should wish that a Camping World or a Campers Inn opens up across the street. They have bigger facilities, there's no question. But guess what? They have more employees. They have to advertise more to fill all those campsites. There's going to be a lot of people coming into that town, that community, that would never have found your park before, right?
Yeah, so true, Bob, and I'm glad you brought that up. I've heard from folks in the past and even to the current day that are thinking about purchasing a park, and they say, well, what if a Sun Communities or a KOA opens up across the street? And my first reaction is to tell them, you should be so blessed. That's a great thing. Right. And it takes them back a little bit at first. But when you think about it, if you or I are traveling to Baltimore, Maryland, and we've never been there before, we're likely to pick a Hilton, for example, because it's a known brand with a consistent guest experience. And we don't know everything that's around the area. We just want to go with something that we have some familiarity with. And so when you get there, you find out there's an incredible B&B across the street or some other alternative accommodation that doesn't have the marketing budget of the Hilton. But lo and behold, there you are looking out your window, and there's a great little business across the street. Well, the next time you're in town, you'll stay at that great little business. So what's happened is you've just leveraged the marketing of the major flag, the major brand, to your benefit, because you're pulling customers from that. And so it's nothing to fear. And, and further to the point, there's some beauty in diversity, right? But I mean, Bob, you and I know this to be true, which is if you got a small park, medium park, whatever it is, if you can find out what your niche is that sets you apart and makes you different, if it's exceptional service, if it's so quirky decorating, whatever it might be that makes you different from that guy across the street, that's how you win anyway. And that's so right. Not everybody needs to have the antiseptic sameness. They want quirky and unusual. And by gosh, if you can do that, your small park can do just great next against that big franchise.
I agree. We only got a couple of minutes left, Randy. But for those folks, I want to repeat, our guest today is Randy Hendrickson with United Park Brokers. Talk a little bit, every time you go camping, every camper you see at some point says, you know what? I think I'll buy a campground. I can do this and I can do it better. And, the fear of the unknown doesn't faze them, but they want to do it. What 3 tips would you give to campers who fully understand the user experience in the campground that think they may want to buy a campground?
Get a good night's rest. Honestly, and I've heard it so many times over the years where somebody will be checking into a park and say, I'd like to do one of these when I retire. You've never worked so hard in your life as you have when managing a campground, RV park, RV resort. You have to wear so many hats. You've got to be an attorney and a plumber and a concierge, and you've got to wear all these hats and work insidious hours. Best advice is work at a park first. Do a work camper stint or something like that. Work a season, actually see what happens in a park on a daily basis. Understand the culture primarily first and foremost. Is this the kind of culture that you identify with? Is a high service business something you want to be a part of, recognizing the hours involved? Am I really a people person? Do I really want to prosper within this thing? Understand what it is you're getting into. It's a business, yes, but it's also a lifestyle change of the highest order. And so if you're ready to make that lifestyle pivot, this can be an incredibly rewarding enterprise, no doubt about it. But learn. Just do all the education you can. Talk to everybody you can till your jaw falls off, and just keep learning, and live it.
Yep. And the most important thing you said it is, are you a people person? Because this is people up close and personal, and society is changing, people are changing, and that's what's changing a lot of the campground, the outdoor hospitality industry. It is a challenge, but it's a wonderful place to make a living, and we provide unique services for RV consumers and in that campground. Randy, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on the Camper Report Show. Any last words for our fans?
Bob, it's just been a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity. I love what you do and all the podcasts out there. I think everybody benefits from these. If I've added anything, even the smallest bit to the queue, I feel very blessed. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy. See you down the road.
Mike from RV Blogger here. Did you know that every trip that you plan in RV Trip Wizard automatically uploads into the GPS in the RV Life app on your phone? Just click the RV Life app, click the hamburger on the bottom, go to RV Trip Wizard. Your trips all populate. Pick the one you want, and then click the directions to the first campground. Click your RV friendly directions, and you're on your way from where you are to the campground where you want to be.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Camper Report Show. My name is John DePietro. And what we're trying to do now is do some follow-up interviews with folks that had a great following last time, in our last time that we spoke to them. And we are going north of the border. It seems kind of funny this time of year going north of the border, but nevertheless, we are going up to British Columbia. We're talking with Jason Tansom, who is with Snowbirds and RV Travelers. Hey, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure up from the snowy Great White North.
And I wanted to, even though I'm a couple provinces away, eh?
Yep, you betcha. Across the country, a 4-hour flight, and we'd be in Ontario.
Is it 4 hours to Ontario? Yeah, that's just about right.
4-hour flight. We're right across the country. Right, we're on the West Coast, right on the West Coast.
Figure same as LA to probably Chicago or
maybe even Boston. Direct flight from there.
Exactly. So we want to make our Canadian friends feel welcome, and we're making you feel welcome now, Jason, because you're allowed to come back to the U.S. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, we certainly are. And man, what a relief that was. It was, of everything that was going on, I think that was more on our minds than anything. Once that border opened, and now it seems like it's always been open.
Well,
People are traveling freely. So yeah, it was a big deal for us, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean, I think the last time we talked to you, it was still closed. It may have been closed, open for Americans to go to Canada, but not the other way around. And
that's right. And at that point, they hadn't even talked about, well, they're discussing it, but there was nothing firm about when from Canada heading south would be, which naturally put a massive damper onto our snowbird audience that, places all along the West Coast, all along the East Coast that they're trying to get to. So they were making ultimate plans with flights and shipping vehicles and just a mess of things, just trying to get down to some sunshine like they normally do.
Well, and there are certain parts of Canada where it's dark and cold for a long, long time. Starting in early November?
Yeah, really. Once our time change happens, even right now, I'm on the West Coast, but by 4:30 it's dark, and you get up and you head to the office at 8, it's still dark. So, and it's cold, and people of our audience, the Snowbirds have worked hard and they've earned this opportunity to own property down south and own these big rigs that they travel with, and not being able to use it has really impacted them and us for sure.
Yep. So now the doors are open. And I was told by a friend of mine who was on the East Coast traveling to Florida, he said every other vehicle had Quebec or Ontario plates.
You bet. On the East Coast, we have two distinct audiences with our magazine. We're a national magazine throughout Canada and North America, but we have two distinct audiences. Obviously the Ontario folks, they're heading down to Florida, Ontario, Quebec, the Maritimes, they're heading down that eastern line, and Florida, Texas, Georgia, those types of things. And on the west here, they're California and Nevada and Arizona and everything in between.
So Jason, tell us a little bit about what is in your current edition of Snowbirds and RV Travelers that people can look
what, John, in each issue we really try to focus on different things for the RV market, of course, and leading up to Christmas, maybe some things that family members or parents or grandparents that are snowbirds or full-time RVers that they might like to get their hands on. So we always focus on some of the new things that and gadgets that the RVers are after. One thing in particular that we've been really focusing a lot lately are the air skirts. These inflatable air skirts that you put under your fifth wheel or your big rig or whatever. And, not only does it keep the heat out down there, but it keeps the critters out. It keeps the dust from coming up. And so we put some videos together. We've done some research on them. We've tested them up here. Keeps the cold out very good. So in return, it'll keep the heat out very good. So that's one thing that we have in these issues. And of course, some of our favorite destinations heading south too. We like to, we like to give our feedback of where we like to stay and where our readers like to stay, and give an unbiased opinion of what we think and why you might like it. Yeah. We stay away from the day-to-day things about what's happening at the border and restrictions, because they change minute by minute, and
especially by the time you publish.
Right.
By the time you write it, and by the time it's on the street, especially with a print edition,
So we save that stuff for social media, but we get more in depth with the magazine and, tell a better, more in detailed story about, where to go, where to stay, what to do, and those types of things.
Yeah. And, getting back to that air skirts thing for 1 second, we have interviewed, actually the person sitting right in your seat right now has been interviewed with my colleague, Bob Zagami, in previous shows. Maybe we can put a link to that here so people can find out more about them. But I have seen them in action, and the ease of setup is amazing. And when you figure, the critter part is really probably more of concern down south.
Yeah, you bet.
Than it is in the northern part.
You bet. They like to chew. They like to chew and they like to eat, and You know, we get stories of these critters making little nests and making little homes, and RVers don't find out about them until they're at the border, and those border guards find them, and generally they're not too happy when you're moving those guys around.
Well,
right?
I'm one of those people that, you know, one day my generator wasn't working, and, you know, you got to check the propane, check the flow, and check the battery, check everything. And finally, I had found out that there was a mouse nest in there that they had just restricted the flow from the propane into the generator. But,
yeah,
you know, I think, you know, it's an international, mice are an international issue. So
you bet. And, you know, up here we get into raccoons and things like that, and they're aggressive. You know, if they want to get in somewhere and they want to do something, they're going to do it.
You don't want to find one at night when you're looking in
the
storage area for something.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
You know, it's interesting to talk to people from other parts of North America as to their camping habits. I know that last year there was a lot of loss of income in Florida and in Texas and California and Arizona, where the Canadians couldn't get through. But we had read earlier this year that those spaces are filled up by U.S. snowbirds that were new into RVing since COVID hit. So it's going to be a very interesting aspect this year to find out how our Canadian friends are going to be able to get back to the place that they used to come for years and years and years.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we've had some reports of that for sure, John. A lot of our readers, I shouldn't say all or the majority, but a lot of our readers for sure own property down there, or they long-term lease or rent. Okay. So they're not impacted that much. It's not too often they just kind of leave blind and hope they can find somewhere. You know, it's sort of like they have an ongoing 6-month type of arrangement types of things. I haven't had any reports yet of anybody being left out in the cold, part of the fun, right? And getting down
or in the warm.
Left out in the warm. Left out of the warm. But, you know, so I haven't had any actual personal responses to that where people are ticked off that they couldn't find anywhere. The one thing that we are noticing is that our snowbirds are filling up a lot more of the shoulder seasons as well. And traditionally, I'm not sure if it's 100% factual, but our snowbirds tend to enjoy the sun a little bit longer. So the parks down south appreciate, you know, our guys coming in October-ish and leaving April, May-ish, as opposed to just a 6 to 8 week, you know, we're more of, you know, 4, 5, 6 month type of snowbirds, right?
You know, I read
that's how long our winter is.
Fill me in on this. That you can only stay for a certain period of time for your insurance to be valid. Is that right?
That's right.
What was the reading on that?
Well, you know what? It's traditionally, you know, the insurance, it is time stamped for sure. There's all types of different scenarios. And as far as the IRS is concerned, being down there for too long, you know, having to pay taxes down there, you know, medical, when is your medical cancel after you've been out of the country from up here for so long? So there's a caveat of things that, you know, a checklist to really be aware of. And there are some hoops, you know, traditionally, like I can speak for my parents, they're snowbirds, and they go down, they're in Palm Springs. They leave generally after Canadian Thanksgiving. So let's say mid-October, and they come back normally start of May. But what they do is they normally fly home at Christmas time. So they get into the country, they get their passports scanned and be legit. They're in the country, you know, for a couple of weeks, and then they go back, they fly back down, and it kind of alleviates any of the insurance problems because everything is pretty much based on continuous stay, John, not the amount of entries and the amount of physical days spent. It's continuous time. You know, some insurance providers will be, but for the most part, I know for our MSP, which we call our medical up here, it's continuously being out of the country, not multiple visits and days out of the country.
Makes it a little easier to deal with it.
Yeah. So, and a lot of snowbirds do come back and, you know, they start missing the grandkids and the chaos of Christmas and come home. So that's generally what a lot of them will do is fly home and be legit going back down.
Great. Hey, we want to thank you so much. Give us that not email address, that website that people can check out some of your content online. It's
just www.suncruisermedia.com. We have a group of publications from our snowbird friends to our off-road 4-wheel drive friends, boating, all the activities for outdoors. You can find at suncruisermedia.com. Thanks, John.
There we go. So we have been talking with Mr. Tansom from Jason Tansom. We're on a first name basis, from Snowbirds and RV Travelers, getting an update on what's going on between our two great countries.